Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to episode 19 of International Expansion Explained. My guest today is the ultimate China watcher, Ashley Dudarenok herself. Now, in case you don't know Ashley, Ashley is a Chinese serial entrepreneur. She's also, though, an award winning marketing professional and she's also an author. So she's a lady of many hats and even more talents with both a marketing agency and a consultancy based in Hong Kong. So, as part of those challenging roles, Ashley often works with Chinese tech companies whose names I'm sure you've heard of, like Alibaba, Tencent, or Huawei, um, on the building the future of retail, digital ecosystems, and all of those topics that we hear so much about these days. But she then also helps companies outside of Greater China to understand what lessons they can learn from them to apply both in their own countries, but also within their own China strategies. So Ashley's been named a LinkedIn top voice in marketing, a guru of digital marketing and fast evolving trends in China by Think is 50, and also as one of the world's top 30 internet marketers by Global Gurus. She's a sought after professional speaker and the author of 10 best selling books on digital China. She's also one of the most energetic people I have had the pleasure of meeting. Welcome, Ashley.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, Kathryn. It's phenomenal to be here. What an introduction! I hope guys that are joining us live are not asleep yet. We are about to start and bring you hopefully energy, value, and a lot of insights.
Yeah, maybe somebody, yes, okay, thank you. I was just about to say, maybe somebody can give us a hi because
Hey,
one
April,
time
we
it
see
happened to
you.
me that
Yes, hello,
it
hello.
didn't connect to LinkedIn and I was like, oh, we didn't. uh, yes. So maybe we can start out by going back a little bit and saying, what was it that brought you? How did you get into all of this kind of international business and this China setting? What's
Absolutely,
what
absolutely.
inspired you to be China, let's say,
Well, I
rather
was
than
actually born kind of at the border of China. I was born in Manchuria in the Russian Far East, city called Vladivostok. And I had quite an international upbringing. So in my hometown, had a lot of Asians from Japan, Korea, mainland China as well. And then I went to study abroad as well at the young age. And when I was 17, I actually moved to mainland China to study business and economics. And that was the journey. So being international it was just the way of life. And another important kind of milestone was when I decided to start a business. A lot of people start a business out of a calling, or they start a business because they have acquired certain expertise already and they want to share it with the world. I started business out of boredom. I was back then a very junior professional in a corporate world in Hong Kong, and then I felt that it was a little bit boring, like the whole setup. And I decided to give it a try. So I tried this business thing. And years later, here we are. It was not always easy. It was ups and downs. It was a lot of learning, a lot of evolution. Right, you evolve as a person, you evolve as a business,
yes.
you evolve as a product. Right, that's a usual journey. And then the third kind of milestone or stepping stone was when I started doing thought leadership, or in other words, sharing what I know, what I read, what I find interesting online through various platforms. And that was also 6 7 years ago when I started doing it for the first time. And over the years, I was able to build a community around it that are interested in China, or as I call them, the China watchers. And it's fantastic to be part of that community. So that's how the journey unfolded. And I'm very grateful and excited to be where I am today. And of course, being part of this broader, bigger thing.
Yeah, and it's always, it seems like everything is always changing in China as well. I think that's what makes it so interesting and so fascinating for so many of us, that there's always something new. Whereas sometimes if you look at Europe, then sometimes it doesn't feel like things are changing in quite the same they're not evolving in quite the same way. So yeah.
The pace is different everywhere. China is a very fast-paced market, but there's other very fast-paced markets around the world. Latin America, in some parts of it, is very fast. Southeast Asia right now is extremely fast, right? So China definitely has a few things going for it when it comes to the speed, when it comes to the innovation, when it comes to young back then, yeah, in the past 30 years, young population, and the central focus on where we want to arrive, this kind of vision. And that's why China was able not to just be fast, but also fast and productive in many ways. So that is why change was implemented. In many other parts of the world, we're either not fast or not productive. Either we were lacking both or one of those two.
Yeah, that's really true. But I mean, I guess at the moment, kind of the elephant in the room is the Chinese economic situation. So, I mean, before we kind of go on to talking about the future of retail, maybe you want to share a couple of words on that. There's so many reports in the West at the moment, which about China is about to implode, and you know, if China collapses, what that will mean for the world economy, or what that would mean for the world economy. And of course, I mean, I visited China quite recently, and you can feel that there's a change in the attitude. It's more pessimistic than things were before. But I think that recession is maybe the wrong word for it, It's a
Mm.
slowdown, but it's not the end of the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. In my perspective, China is definitely losing momentum amidst what you exactly said, the lower, weaker confidence levels. So, in
Yes.
other words, the domestic demand is softening, right? So, we spoke about it when we met a couple of weeks back in Hong Kong. We spoke about a lot of, let's say, baby formula manufacturers or importers
Oh,
are
yes.
sitting on stock. We spoke about, let's say, wine importers also sitting on stock, not being able to sell the wine bottles from Australia to Europe, etc. Right? So domestic demand is softening. At the same time, the spending is less, about 20 to 30%, depending on the category, but savings are higher. So people are preparing for that, kind of difficult time to come. And it's understandable, right? We just had the global pandemic, and when in the rest of the world it finished 1.5 years ago, in China, it's literally been 9 months. We've been released into the wild 9 months ago, December, January, basically this year. Apart from that, of course, in China, there's the property downturn, which is very persistent, and it is a big
Yes.
challenge. There's also certain pressure in the industrial activity, the manufacturing output. But this being said, when we look at this manufacturing output, the major manufacturers' growth rates are higher than pre-COVID levels. So all of this put together, the country has undergone severe shakeup. The mood, one of the other things, like this optimism that made people feel that tomorrow is going to be better than today, always for the past 30 years, that is changing, and that has changed over the course of pandemic and strict measures and various hardships and tech layoffs, etc., etc. When in the rest of the world, people are kind of more prepared for it. They're prepared that there's some good years, bad years, there's cycles,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Plus, generally, people outside of China are living in a more kind of pessimistic environment, right? People just
Yeah.
don't always expect this kind of growth. In China, that came as a shock, right? And of course, younger people feeling the loss of purpose and all of that coming together. But GDP will continue growing. It will not grow in double digits. It's unrealistic to expect that China is going to continue its trajectory that it had for the past, 30 years. But it will continue growing, and it will miss, very likely, based on many economists' forecast, it will miss its GDP target this year as well, but only slightly. So the growth will probably be about 4.8, 5%. And going forward in the next, let's say, 5 to 6, 7 years, the growth of China is likely going to be between 3.5 to 5%. So is it as beautiful, sunny, and optimistic as it was before. No, China is evolving. It's becoming a more mature market. It's becoming a market with higher salaries, different expectations on life, different choices and options, etc., etc. With its own very significant structural issues, as we said, right? Labor contributions, the aging, let's say, society. So
The
it is
birth rate.
evolving, but absolutely the birth rates, the fact that China is again becoming an aging society and very, very fast. So it's not a complete disaster. And also China is addressing some of these things with turnaround policies. Like, for example, there are some tax reductions and local government debt swaps, and there's some reducing down payments for, let's say, mortgages. But of course, currently these measures are not enough to in 3 months or 5 quarters to switch the whole situation. So China will continue growing, the growth will slow down, and we are about to see the new normal for China. What is normal for that market? One thing that we cannot take away from this market is it is one of the biggest consumer markets in the world. The consumers are still very much interested in both domestic and international products. People are very tech savvy, and we are going to see a lot of still innovation, consumer market innovation, platform innovations, and all sorts of tech, new version of reality coming out of this market.
Yeah. And I think we have to also be realistic that even before the pandemic, a lot of economists or analysts were looking at China and saying, okay, well, the base level that China has now reached with the economy, it's unrealistic to expect to keep growing at those rates every year, whatever you might want to see. And I mean, for most of the world, a growth rate of 4 or 5% would be an absolute dream for politicians. If they could promise 5%,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. China is arriving in its new normal, and that journey to arriving into what's normal for that market, what's that expectation, is of course a little bit bumpy given the geopolitical, let's say, color that's given into everything right now when it comes to this particular place.
Yeah. At the moment, it doesn't make things easier, does it? Because there's always that spin aspect in outside of China.
In the story.
Yeah, there's always some perspective to the story, let's say. Yeah. But I mean, thank you for those insights. I mean, I think we spoke earlier we spoke a couple of weeks back about the latest megatrends. And I mean, I, for one, over the past years have always looked forward to seeing these megatrend reports that you and your team bring every so often. And the last couple of times I've had the honor to be able to make a small contribution. And the last one was about social commerce. Now, this for me is something that, obviously, being somebody who he's a kind of China watcher, then this feels like something which is quite normal. But for a lot of people outside of the China ecosystem, so to speak, this idea of social commerce and quite why it's such a big deal, they find it so hard to understand, right? I mean, I know I spoke to a business owner in the UK the other week, and he said to me, well, it's just like teleshopping used to be back in the 80s, isn't it? And I was trying to explain to him that no, it's a much more mainstream kind of phenomena than that. And I think this was hard for him to understand why this trend to social commerce, why it's become so important, or the fact that it is so important. For him, it was something, he seemed to think it was just something that bored housewives maybe look at on an afternoon, But,
yeah, no, absolutely. When it comes to social commerce, ultimately, again, China is experimenting with a lot of technologies, and what they're good at is implementing at scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Taobao Live started many years ago, and it wasn't 3, 4, 5 years ago. It was 8, 9, 10 years ago. And at the very first, nobody was interested in live streaming, and nobody was watching it. And then what happened is we had proper boju, right? We had the proper anchors that were able to entice that interest and able to sell and able to entertain, educate, and sell at the same time. So that's what live streaming commerce is really about. It's ultimately about being able in one go to connect with your customer live, set up just like we're doing right now. So LinkedIn, our LinkedIn friends community, please drop us the questions. Please tell us that you're here. We would love to see your comments right now. Please drop it right there. Let's make it feel like a real live streaming, like a real social commerce almost
Yes.
setup. But yes, so it's an opportunity to connect with the community live. It is an opportunity to entertain them, have fun, right? Educate them about the product, about the industry, about the things that are important to whatever influencer who is running it. And it is an opportunity to sell as well. Of course, the pandemic boosted it further, but even before the pandemic, a
Yes.
lot of people were ultimately using it, and not just Gen Zs. A lot of people purchasing were actually above the age of 40, 50 years old. If we look at live streaming itself in 2021, for instance, the total GMV of e-commerce sales, live streaming stood only 14%, and traditional e-commerce was 83% of the market. So 83% were platforms such as Taobao, Tmall, Jingdong, Pinduoduo. 14% was live streaming commerce, and everything else like new retail, for example, direct to consumer or group buying, they were like 1 or 2%. So a year later, in 2022, last year, that share increased from 14 to 20%.
Yeah.
So traditional commerce is losing market share, and it's losing that market share at speed. We cannot deny that. But does it mean that right now Alibaba or whatever other traditional platforms are going to die and we're all only going to shop live through short videos and live streaming? Not true. So social commerce provides you opportunity to speak with somebody, to feel the part of the community, to also bargain and negotiate as you're at it. It is also very much powered by discounts. So the moment you stop giving people discounts, they also lose interest in watching ultimately your channel. So there's a balance, there's checks and balances that kind of prevent live streaming to take over the whole industry. And ultimately social commerce, it's not only about live streaming, it's also about live chat, right? When you speak and complete the whole conversation, we call it conversational commerce, where you're chatting with someone either through a call or through a chat box, and they guide you about the best product for you, and you complete the whole transaction online. It is through also your existing CRM channels, etc. It is part of the bigger transformation. It's not going anywhere. Social commerce is only going to become more and more powerful. And of course, in countries like China, where they are already used to digital, they are already used to mobile, they are already used to community group buying, live streaming, and they have platforms, online wallets and mindset for them. Of course, this transformation is just faster and probably stronger, right? But it is going to come one way or another to the rest of the world in some shape and form, not exactly copy paste from China.
No, I agree. I mean, back in 2014, 2015 with infant formula, we had a CRM system where we could literally track every can through the whole through the through the whole product cycle. And I think for Europeans, for the Western European environment that I was working with, it was really hard for them to understand why a mother would be able to accept having that kind of, let's say, having somebody know so much about her purchasing journey and the fact that she bought one tin in shop A, and usually she would buy 6 tins every week, but she would buy them always in a different place, and or that the customer service team would phone and say, we wanted to check if everything was okay because we saw you didn't buy anything for a couple of weeks or for a month or something like this. You always bought so regularly. What happened? And they
Yeah,
would,
which is a fantastic way to integrate, exactly as we
yes,
said, this conversation. And I see Kate joining us here from LinkedIn. She's saying there's still very much a place for traditional e-commerce for someone who is neurodivergent, that social selling could feel oppressive, etc. Absolutely, not just for that, but there's also some product categories where you don't need to chat with someone.
yeah,
There's just product categories where you know what you want and you just go and you buy it and you've done your research and you don't need additional help or additional discount or whatever else, right? And if we look at again the numbers, so Alibaba in 2020 used to hold 48% of the market share when it comes to the whole commerce in China. Today, in 2023, it's about 40, 41, 42% max. And in 2024, it's going to fall below 40%. So as you can see, from nearly 50, we are in just 5 years going down to 40 only. Douyin, on the other hand, is growing quite fast because, again, they're using all the social elements. So the trend is there. But of course, traditional e-commerce is never gonna go to zero. Probably at the very worst they're gonna stabilize somewhere at about, I don't know, 40% or 50%. It still remains to see. It's $1 million question how much. And another thing that's happening right now in this social commerce space is that we are seeing a lot of innovation coming from CAI, right? Conversational AI, generative AI, and all sort of assistance. So imagine that in China, even let's say on Taobao Live already for some time, you have live streamers that look cartoonish, but that can work for your brand, representing your channel 24/7. Right now, many of these assistants, for example, in some major Chinese banks, are able to talk to you about your customer needs. So for example, you want to buy an insurance or an investment product,
mhm,
and they're able to actually, speak with you, guide you, and recommend stuff. So think about a couple of years down the road or even a year later, where many categories will be sold by virtual live streamers that are able to tailor, that are able to have conversation with you. And essentially it's a little bit like this customer service that is 24/7 available. You want anything to buy vitamins online, suddenly you remember that you don't have sunscreen, or you want some food that you really, really love. You go online and you can choose. You want to shop by yourself, right? So traditional commerce, or you say, I want assistance. And then let's say Taobao Live or Douyin or whatever else switches on and they talk to you, right, through this live stream, and they tailor an offer. Because very often also through these conversations, you're asking for some goodies. For example, I go to Taobao Live and then I chat with people. I don't just want that standard product, but I want them to change the color, to put my name on it, to give me, apart from this, something else that's not included
yes,
as a gift. Right.
yes,
So all that at one point, right now, you need a huge, and you, Kathryn, know that a lot, with distribution, the whole TP, Taobao partner operation is hugely invested by this manpower, but soon it will be handled by the platform itself. So it will be cheaper and hopefully even more tailored and better for
yeah.
people.
I think it's going to,
Frustration-free shopping.
yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting development to watch. Also, this question about KOLs versus KOCs versus virtual KOLs, I think is going to be very interesting to see how that develops because, I mean, realistically speaking, that is such a sensitive, especially in China, which is actually compared to many European markets, it's quite a conservative market in terms of what is acceptable for personal behavior for example, KOLs, and where it's quite easy to get involved in a scandal for things that people probably wouldn't bat an eyelid about. Well, I mean, they would be interested in the West, but they wouldn't be, they wouldn't be completely
They
scandalized.
wouldn't necessarily cancel you, right?
No, it wouldn't cancel your career, not in the same way that it might do in China. And I think that
Yeah.
as
It
soon
is
as a
very
virtual,
safe to
yeah,
have your own virtual live stream. Of course, it is very safe. But at the same time, if we know anything about humans, is that we are complicated and we love other complicated people. We don't like following brands. Psychologically, we are drawn to flow full, not flawless, but flowful people, because we see our reflection in them and their reflection in us, so we can relate. So will there be more and more live streamers that are virtual, and obviously virtual assistants that are able to handle all sorts of requests? Absolutely. But will we completely forego celebrities, gossip, cancel culture and whatever else? No, because we're drawn to real human beings, and we want to have them in our life, to continue watching them, to gossip about them, to be intrigued by why something happened, and this is a part of it.
And not only that, but I think that that's also one reason why people are drawn to actually participate in social selling and in these lives and to chat, because they want the opportunity to have that kind of connection to a famous KOL or somebody that's quite
Yes,
well
and
known in
they
that space,
feel
right?
absolutely like imagine there is this super big celebrity, right? Back in the day, for example, in the West, there was this idea that once you're a, let's say, Hollywood celebrity, you need to distance yourself from people, because only when you distance yourself, when you create that wall, people want you more. Even in luxury, when you look at luxury posters, right, the posters of luxury,
Yes.
let's say clothing, they say 1 millimeter of smile basically loses you $10,000. So you need to have that face that stares at you from a luxury poster. It's not friendly. It's only the consumer products like Mars and sneakers of this world, and I do not know, Oral B toothpaste. That's where you see people smiling and everybody being happy, because they want to appeal to you. But the luxury poster, the woman looks at you as if she really has an upset stomach, or that she's really having a very unhappy day. But the distance creates the intrinsic kind of internal desire, for you to have what they have, for you to be closer to them. So back in the day in Hollywood, and in the rest of the let's say celebrity business, it was all about creating that separation. Yeah, appearing friendly in moments when you interact with fans, but rather than being far away from them. But what social media has done is they said, okay, there's this famous person and you really want to affiliate with him or her, you can actually go and watch their live stream and comment and support them and buy the products that they're promoting. You can vote with your dollar right now and create impact for them right now. And if you do it consistently, there's a chance for you to interact with them. It was amazing. It's like a basically daily fan club outing. And yes, this will likely continue. Here we see Kate with us. Did you see the craziness around the launch of KCI's UK musician new energy drink? They were reselling for a couple of $100s online. Absolutely, that actually happens. With a lot of products,
Yep.
right? When they're launching, and then somebody is purchasing the stock, and they are reselling 10 times the original price. So that craziness also happens. But the thing is, brands very often orchestrate it. They want to create that limited edition. You only produce, let's say, 10,000 bottles of that vanilla milk. You can produce 10,000 bottles or 100,000 or a million bottles. But why is it so few bottles? Because you want to say that you sold out, and people want it more. People want to try that specific flavor that's right now unattainable.
And especially in China, for many, many years, that has been a seriously successful sales strategy
Strategy.
to create a certain exclusivity by keeping the stocks limited, let's say. Not impossible, but limited. It's
Well, in many areas, actually very impossible. We all know that in China there's this big fan economy, right? So you actually follow a musician and you like them very much, and you're willing, whatever they are advertising, even if you don't need this product. For example, a colleague of mine, she's following a boy band, and the boys in that band recently signed with Gillette,
okay.
the shaving company and the shaving cream. She does not. She's a woman, and this particular model of razor is not particularly good looking or whatever. It doesn't really fit. She bought it just because she wanted to support her favorite idols. So in China, there is that economy that is very, very popular. And right now, if you, for example, want to buy many bands, they have their own clothing lines.
Yep.
It's nearly impossible, because they just drop you again 1,000 t-shirts, 200 pants, etc., etc. But once you got your hands on it, you can resell for a lot of money, and you can really feel that you are in the super VIP club. Yeah, you are a real fan for this specific band or specific artist. So limited availability and limited edition products, they are not a Chinese invention.
No.
And Japanese, Koreans, Europeans, everybody succumbs to that. But yes, but of course, the scale of China is probably something that sets it apart.
That's, yeah. And I think that is one of the things that, on the one hand, the scale of China is what attracts a lot of people who maybe they should maybe be living, keeping their fingers off China, because they're not ready to enter into the market. And people assume, because they've heard so many success stories of people selling huge quantities, they assume that means that the brand is successful, and don't realize
Yeah.
that actually what is a huge quantity for a small company in, I don't know, in France somewhere, is actually just a drop in the ocean when you talk about the Chinese market. And I think that is something that it's quite difficult for brands to get their head around, just how difficult and how expensive the Chinese market can be, and where they should best be investing, especially when they have limited budgets, or whether they should stay
Absolutely.
away, you know?
Absolutely. And even the fact that what is success for you, because a lot of reported success is GMV.
Yes.
GMV counts just the basically sales and turnover, but nobody talks about the 30 to sometimes 50 to sometimes 80% of those products are being shipped back.
Yep.
Right? So GMV is a very strange matrix. It actually says nothing. Because the return rate is a very, very important matrix that's not being reported. And that's number one. Number two, nobody is actually talking about, okay, so has it been an orchestrated launch or not? Most of the companies, whenever they run this kind of viral campaign with a big streamer or with a big celebrity, they're losing money on it, because all these fields are piling up. You are selling, but then you need to ship the products back once the returns are hitting. You as the seller are responsible for shipping back, right? So you're losing money on all those deliveries. And in the end, at the end of the day, you don't have profit really. Sometimes you're losing money very often. But then there's this afterglow, right? After the sale, then probably for the next couple of weeks, you have hyper demand, or you are more discoverable on certain platforms. And that's how many brands are also making it work online. And what you mentioned, Kathryn, that was very interesting, that indeed China market is not for everyone, right? And you need to assess it properly. For example, on Tmall, the company says that you need to be a company of about 50 million US dollars in yearly sales revenue, willing to invest about 4 to 10 million RMB, which is between 600 to 1.5 million US dollars. For your first year kind of marketing and promotion budgets. You need to be a brand that is well known among Chinese consumers, which means that they are already bringing your products from other markets. Yes, and selling it. You need to also, be agile, and you need to plan for long haul. It's not that you're going to enter and then make money in the first year. You're likely going to make money on your year 3 if you're very lucky, etc.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the things that people look at it, and they see all of these platforms. Maybe they've heard of Alibaba. Probably they've heard of Alibaba because they have a lot of offices around the world who are aimed at promoting Alibaba. Yeah.
Yeah.
But people kind of underestimate the level. Firstly, they underestimate the level of discounts that probably, if you're going to be doing 60% of your business in big promotions, then those are not running at list price. They're running at deep discounts. They forget that you also have other costs on top of that. It's not just the cost of actually discounting the product, you have to also support it. But they also underestimate how much resource it needs to make those decisions when your TP comes to you and says, we have to decide something within the next 2 hours, because European companies for sure are not used to making a decision within 2 hours. That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All that comes on
yeah,
top. Operational
yeah.
differences. Yeah.
And I mean, what would you say are the current hottest trends in this digital space for the future? Where should companies who are maybe already in the market, where should they be thinking about investing their marketing budgets for 2024?
I think there's nothing more important than understanding the consumer. And then choosing the right platform where they spend their time and creating the right content, and then ultimately connecting with them. So a lot of those trends that I would feature in the digital trends, they are connected with consumer. For example, right now we have a big push towards local and regional spending, which means previously it was all about globalization. It was all about the whole of
Mhm.
China, or big, we talk about big strokes, Gen Z, big strokes, or China is becoming more infatuated with Chinese domestic brands. Big strokes, it's about common prosperity. Big strokes, we are tired of rah 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 996 culture. But right now, today, we see a lot more local niche um, trends and realities that brands need to understand, capture, and react to. So we become more localized. So Chongqing shall be running their own thing, and Guangdong has their own thing. And so if you're somewhere in Wuxi, then again you're doing some variations of activations, including content, including colors, including products very often. And that is very, very challenging for large brands, and it's extremely challenging for smaller
Yeah.
brands, right? So choose your niche wisely and see how you can simplify this ultimately regional spending. Another very important thing to note, of course, is that the social habits are changing very, very much post pandemic and post this kind of national mood crisis, as they call it. Not everything will go online, right? We thought that, okay, online entertainment will only become bigger. Everybody will continue watching stuff online. Or like a lot of alcohol brands during the pandemic, they actually made a lot of money because people were buying alcohol, hard liquor for home, so they could mix cocktails and keep drinking at home. So everybody's like, oh, great. So this is going to continue post pandemic. And, how many tech companies, even in the rest of the world, in the West, hired so many teams, and they thought that these teams are going to be supporting much bigger ecosystem and infrastructure because this is going to be the new baseline. What happened then? Pandemic has kind of wind down, and they fired a lot of people because again, expansion was too big. So the same thing, social habits are changing, but not everything will go online. People are still craving offline experiences, personal connections, concerts, small communities, DIY, sports, nature exploration, etc., etc. So that's important. Conversational commerce is another very big trend, number 3, and I've mentioned it before. So making sure that you have a digital assistant in place, that it is conversational AI empowered, that it is trained on your data and on data from the industry is very, very important. So conversational commerce ultimately lifts the burden from your internal team, collects and analyzes data real time, and ultimately it is just kind of a lot more hassle-free consumption for your customers. Community commerce, of course, is also very important. So community commerce means that you get yourself a social plus kind of setup when you have a community of hobbyists, right? They are, let's say, yoga enthusiasts in their 50s. So that's a very niche community. And you are able to activate, to sell to these communities, to entertain them, to appoint and connect with community leaders, etc., etc. So this will continue being very, very important. And there's more and more opportunities through groups, through various functions on a variety of apps and platforms to connect with that community and continue building it. Another thing, of course, that's very, very important is that China will continue going through these demographical changes. Yeah, the youth is currently basically is looking for meaning. What does it mean to be a Chinese Gen Z? And the aging China, so the silver hair generation is also looking for meaning. What does it mean to be a silver hair generation Chinese? They have the most money right now, silver hair generation, and they want to spend that money, and not only on their family but also on themselves. So all these are big trends, and as you can see, they're not very digital trends, but these are the trends that shall be the foundation of your digital strategy. Understanding the market, understanding the consumer, and based on that you invest in tools and channels that help you connect and bring out these realities, and connect them with your business.
Yeah. And I think that people have to, or companies also need to really understand that compared with, certainly with Western Europe, then there are just an unbelievable number of touch points on the consumer journey, both on and offline, and that you have to be really, it's better to say, we're not going to sell in, I don't know, we're not going to sell in every region in China. We're just going to select certain cities where we're going to focus. And those maybe shouldn't be Shanghai and Beijing, because maybe that is just too much of a red ocean for you. Maybe you should be looking in tier 2 cities to focus your first expansion efforts. But like you said, you can make progress by focusing on smaller communities and by looking for that niche and looking for focus and going for depth rather than, let's say, a watering can approach where you don't actually really reach anybody too much because you're just sprinkling water on the top or sprinkling your money on the top of the market, you know. I think it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Naomi, we're coming a little bit to the end, but I wanted to ask you for your predictions on Double 11, seeing as it is the season of Double 11, then, and especially because I think the last 2 years, when I look at it, then it feels a little bit like a popped balloon. I mean, it's still, let's say, it's still a really important event, no question about that, and it's still a huge festival. But it doesn't have that kind of huge driving energy that it had 6 or 7 years ago.
Right. So
It's
11/11,
its peak a little bit.
absolutely. So 11/11 has also evolved. It's no longer a day, it is a festival. It's basically a 1 month event. It's not just Alibaba, it's all
Everyone.
platforms, online and offline. I mean, seriously, last year or the year before, Didi was there. I mean, Meituan Dianping is on it. Or, Jingdong's, Pinduoduo's of the world, many offline stores. I
Yes.
think it's thousands of offline stores, etc. So when it comes to 11/11, it is going to be this year smaller. GMV is not reported, but I'm talking about the amount of sales done in one specific date. It will be very much focused on launching new products and featuring these new things. And it is a little bit like, Halloween. When Halloween was invented, Halloween was obviously a traditional holiday, but Americans back in the day who wanted to sell sweets to kids really turned it into a cultural landmark, into the day when you dress up and you go and it's all about the candy. So basically it was very much like an advertising campaign linked with a cultural traditional event. So 11/11 at this point, it's probably evolving into something like that. People know that it used to be a Singles Day. People know that it used to be a day of discounts, and it is going to be an important day, an important month. but everybody will be doing their own thing. Everybody will be reinterpreting what does
Yeah.
1111 actually stand for and how do they want to participate in it. People are also tired. They don't want to wait and save for the whole year for this one day. They don't need to, because right now we have live streaming. So the lowest price online is not no longer on 1111. You don't need to wait all those months. You can go to any live streaming, and very often even brands, right, they have their own live streaming room run by their colleagues where you can, get great deals. So there is value in it, and it's still discounts, it's still launch of new products, it's still a way for a platform to showcase and launch new
Yeah.
features, to give you, for example, a super cool, later on, a couple of years down the road, hologram, or super cool conversational AI assistant. So it's a still valid cultural landmark like Halloween. But what does it mean, and how do people celebrate it? Is going to be different, right? In some parts of the world, outside of the US, nobody celebrates Halloween, or you dress up for school. In some parts of the world, it is the biggest kind of thing. So it will be different. And ultimately, I think that with all these shopping festivals, Chinese platforms overdid it a little bit, because it was 618, then it's 1111,
It
then
was,
it's Chinese New
it
Year,
was
then it is
every
Mother's
month.
Day, then it is was a Valentine's Day. It's never ending festival, cascade of festivals, plus live streaming, plus my, this whole slogan, buy right now. And the fact that China, of course, as a country, is also moving towards the common prosperity, right? Or we call it olive shaped society, that it's not a pyramid, yeah, with very few wealthy people
Mhm.
at the top and a lot of kind of lower income households at the bottom, but they're trying to build the olive shaped society. They think that the party is very much focused on the common prosperity. Also, this crazy overconsumption
Yeah.
is not really aligning itself with this message. So all these things put together, 1111 is going to be just fine. It's not going to keep growing like it used to. And what you've mentioned earlier today, it's a little bit like deflated balloon. Well, maybe, but hopefully it's still shiny and pretty balloon that some people would want to own and participate in.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting how it moves forward, because I think it's also a good opportunity for a lot of new brands to showcase and to use it as a launch period, even if it's not like quite the same. It's also that question: is it really healthy for a brand to be doing 40% or 50% or even more of their business like during one shopping festival? Or what was it in the past? At least I know the regulation at Alibaba was you couldn't do any price increases in a month where they had an S level promotion, and then and at that time they had 10 S level promotions in the year. um and then it became more, so like you could never do a price increase. Well,
Yeah. All these are exactly the reasons. And also 1111 for consumer side is just become very
yeah.
complicated. I mean, how many times I've seen all sorts of friends sitting there over this 1111 couple of weeks calculating their benefits, right? You add, oh, $5 there, bonus here. You need to be a mathematician to calculate what is the best way. And very often the numbers don't add up. It just makes no sense. So it is complicated. It requires a lot of involvement, time commitment, and mind share in order to play it properly. And of course, once people invested the time, they feel even more committed to actually spending the money, etc. So it has pros and cons for brands, for platforms, for bloggers, for consumers, but ultimately it's going to be something completely different going forward versus what it was in the past 10 years.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be very interesting. So maybe just one last question before I ask you to tell us about your event that's going on in Shanghai in October. If you were starting out today, what advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you do now? Or what would you do differently, maybe?
I think whatever challenges came my way, they were absolutely necessary to make me who I am right now.
Hmm.
So, in terms of advice to my younger self, um, I think, probably um, start investing in yourself even earlier,
Mhm.
because the success of your business, the success of your life, um, is 100% related to your psychology as a person. So if you have challenges in any area of life, be it money, be it relationships, be it building business connections, or whatever it may be, start working on your psychology in that area. So what's your problem with the money? What's your unhealthy psychology when it comes to money? What's your unhealthy psychology or expectation when it comes to relationships? What's your expectation? What's your point of view on what business is supposed to give you, or what you are supposed to invest in business, right? So there's always a reason in your successes and in your failures. And by the way, success is not always. Very often we succeed, I cannot say by chance, but there's a big luck
Yes.
element in it. Timing, and you never succeed alone. It's about the people that you have around you. So somebody helped you, somebody introduced you to the right people. It was the right time. So the big luck element. So it's not that we always succeed because of our abilities. Very often we also succeed, at least initially, by luck,
Yes.
through other people. But when it comes to failure, in my experience, 90% of the time you fail because of your own psychological limitations. And this is beautiful because you have 100%
Of
control over
yes.
yourself, and you can change it, improve it, act on it immediately, just like that. The moment you realize where the issue is, you can make an instant change. So I would give myself the only advice, basically start investing in your psychology even earlier, because this is the most important determinant of your success, your future life, and your happiness.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, thank you. So tell us about your event that's coming up. And I think you had a book. You have a book that re-releases in September as well, don't you?
Oh yes, tomorrow actually our new book, The Innovation Factory. It's a shameless plug,
Yep.
but yeah, Innovation Factory is the book that I co-authored with Ron Wardle, and it's basically about what can Western direct-to-consumer brands learn from China experience. So what can they learn from China's tech ecosystems? What can they learn from uh, direct to consumer brands, and how they promote
Mhm.
their products and sell them, and how they understand their consumers, and what can they learn from China's management and leadership models that are very unique, but they also build very sometimes toxic but sometimes very effective management and team
Mhm.
cultures. And Chinese enterprises are ultimately competing at a different pace. They are able to also generate different results, right? So the book is covering ecosystems, it's covering direct to consumer brands in China, and it's covering the leadership models. Do get yourself a download. It's going to be available on Amazon tomorrow, which is the
20th.
20th of September.
Yes.
And yes, our event is coming to Shanghai also in October. Is going to be a China Digital Plus Summit. So it's going to be the largest get together of uh, tech professionals, innovators, digital marketers in an English speaking setting in Shanghai. 300 to 500 participants, from bloggers to tech companies to brands to other China watchers and experts. There's going to be 20 plus speakers. It's focused around three major themes. One is customer centricity, the other one is the future of retail, and the third one is technology in action. And yeah, it's going to be a day full of learning. It's going to be super fun. The keynotes are going to be the keynote addresses. These speeches are going to be all very short, just 20 minutes. There will be some display of technology, so you will be able to actually play with it. There will be tons of promotional partners, media partners, and other experts featured at the event. I see Alberto right now messaging us. It's fantastic to see you here. Hi, Alberto. He's going to be at the event, for instance, as well. So do join us if you're in Shanghai. If you're not in Shanghai, fly over. It's worth it. It's really worth it. And if you really cannot fly over, we are also going to try to pull some of the keynotes and some of the sessions and put them later on to our digital China Summit YouTube page, so that you could enjoy them later on. That's it. The shameless plus is finished. The shameless plug is finished, and our digital plus summit Shanghai 18th of October is coming soon. Do join us. Do join.
Unfortunately, I can't join on that day because I'm in Tianjin on that day. And
I know that is why you're going to be with us online and in spirit.
I will be with you for sure in spirit and hoping to watch some things in replay. But after 4 years, I need to be in Tianjin on that day. I have just that time, and then I fly back from Beijing. So yeah, yeah.
There's always next
There's
year.
always-
It's going to come back next
Yes,
year.
there's always the next visit. There's always the next visit for sure. Anyway, I would like to say thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts and all of your knowledge with us today. It's been a really, really interesting discussion. And I'm sure that this is something that will be a very popular also in the recording. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are going to watch the replay. If anybody has any questions, you have like a couple of seconds to to quickly get a question in before we finish up. But other than that, I would say thank you for joining us in your late evening. And yeah,
Thank you so much, Kathryn. It was such a pleasure. It's very, very important to also, interact with community. And I love that we have this live chat opportunity, right? And people that are
yes,
watching us can actually drop their comments and we can see it all. Thank you, April. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Alberto, guys, as well. It's fantastic to have you here and looking forward to more sessions to come and see you guys around in Shanghai, Hong Kong, and broader China. Stay awesome and go get them all.
go have
Woo!
fun. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.